12 o'clock. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us in this panel, Fostering Community Leadership. My name is Alejandra Warren. I'm the Executive Director of Plastic Free Future. We are a nonprofit organization dedicated to the reduction and elimination of single-use plastic, and we also focus on sustainability education to underserved communities. So we understand the importance of community leadership, and that's why I'm so happy to be introducing today our panelist, Hayden Sloan, Strategic Director of Communication for Race to Zero Waste. She's always learning and recently finished that United Nations System Staff College course on the circular economy and the 2030 agenda. A really fun fact about Hayden, she is a PADI dive master and escapes to the sea whenever possible. So I'm sure your connection with zero waste goes with a connection to the oceans, right, Hayden? Olivia Sanchez, welcome, Olivia. She is the Recycling and Community Outreach Program Coordinator for Riverside County, California, in the Department of Waste Resources. She has over 20 years in waste and recycling programs, and she is on the board of directors for the Southern California Waste Management Forum. This is a really short panel, so we're gonna get started with Hayden. Go ahead, Hayden, take it away.
All right, let me pull up my presentation here. Hi, everyone. All right, so welcome. My name is Hayden Sloan. I'm the Strategic Director of Communications for Race to Zero Waste. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm really excited to talk to you today about our programs and how they foster community leadership. So to start out, you might have seen this if you were in the sponsor showcase just now, a few minutes ago. But let's talk about our name. So the Race to Zero Waste started out with the cup-free and bib-free runs some years ago, and it's kind of evolved since then to become a race to zero waste that's more metaphorical, right? So we have our name that instills an urgency towards zero waste, right? And we have this great partnership with Clean Canteen for these reuse cups. So we support reuse and we work toward moving toward an accessible and equitable circular economy by reducing single-use plastics and by promoting zero waste through our zero waste stations, which we'll talk about shortly. We do have races still in the spirit of the actual race to zero waste, physically racing. We had a virtual race during the pandemic, and we hope to have another one upcoming in May. So hopefully you can join us for that. Follow us and stay tuned. So let's talk about our public zero waste education stations. They're the zero waste station pop-ups. So we see here, this is one at Ocean Beach where folks were doing a beach cleanup and then also sorting that waste to be then properly recycled, composted, or landfilled as needed. Furthermore, we had a reuse bin, a fourth bin, as we call it, to collect things with Project Homeless Connect, which we'll see as part of our community partners here shortly. But this zero waste station idea developed from the way that we had been using the 3-bin system at events and guiding attendees, either at events or in public spaces, to separate their waste appropriately. But because of the pandemic, we had to find a way to separate ourselves from that. And so we ended up with the zero waste station in its current iteration, which is the 3-bin system with a table that actually physically separates our zero waste specialists from participants and directs them either vocally or with gestures to show them where to put their waste. And we found that that actually increases the educational component so that people are stopping and thinking for that moment to actually put their waste in the correct bin instead of handing it off to our zero waste station specialists. And so then we avoid contact, we maintain our social distance, and we increase education in zero waste. So we found that that really works, and we hope to create a kit for that in the future so that they can be in more public spaces and at more events as people desire them. So furthermore, we also do data collection. So here's a backside view of our zero waste station. We have the bins in front with the table and then the toters in the back, and we empty those as they get full. So we are weighing and calculating the waste that we collect, the recycling that we collect, and we help events avoid that landfill waste. So at things like, we're hoping to get into farmers markets. We've been at Dolores Park. So Love Dolores has been a big partnership throughout the year. And we have our San Francisco Department of the Environment, SFE grant, that is helping us expand these zero waste stations, both physically here and online. So in our hybrid model, we're also getting the educational component on social so that we can expand our audience and expand that education even further. So with our community partnerships, we're fostering the idea of collaboration, working together, and also being on the ground, introducing the zero waste idea to communities. We get zero waste specialists from the communities that we work in, sometimes paid, sometimes volunteers, and then they become those ambassadors to the communities for zero waste, for proper recycling. So it's not just that we're educating attendees, we're also working to educate folks to be the person who can answer that question. We know that it's difficult, like, does this go in recycling? Does this go in compost? I'm not sure. Right. And so hopefully we're helping create more people who are able to answer those questions within their communities and then be leaders in the zero waste movement themselves. So here's just a couple of photos of the different organizations that we work with, among many. So Project Homeless Connect, as I mentioned already. Dispatch Goods is another one that we have started working with. We introduced the 4th bin for reuse. To be able to take their containers. So if you don't know who Dispatch Goods is, they do reusable containers for takeout. And we definitely promote the idea of reuse and support their mission, absolutely. And so making it easy and accessible for folks to be able to use those containers and drop them off in any location, that's what we want to see, right? So the zero waste station pop-ups at Dolores Park became a drop-off location, and we would like to continue that partnership as well in the future. Another one is with Reuse Refuse. So that's the last picture here. We do a number of community cleanup events. This one was from our Halloween donation drive. So we had gently used clothing and backpacks and things to be donated for folks in need. And so that's kind of that reuse portion. If you saw the presentations earlier, it's hard to kind of calculate that, but we're hoping to get a weight of the reuse elements that are donated so that we can begin to get that data collection for not just landfill, compost, and recycling, but also the reuse side of things. And so those are just some of the community partnerships that we have going on. And we are definitely always looking to expand those and work in conjunction with other folks on the ground. These are based in the Bay Area, but I'm based in Madrid. So we're also working on expanding our contacts here in Madrid to get the Race to Zero Waste to be La Carrera hacia Residuo Cero, which we're very excited about. So furthermore, as we get into expanding zero waste education on to online through hybrid events, one of the campaigns that we had was Zero Waste Action Month, which was throughout the month of October. So we had some expert interviews, we had different themes for different weeks, and the idea is to share your zero waste actions on social using the hashtag Zero Waste Action Month. So we hope you'll join us again for the Zero Waste Action Month in October of next year, so that we can continue to show that there is public support for zero waste. Using those grassroots efforts can help influence policy as well. The second thing we have is the Wild and Scenic Film Festival. So we host the on-tour version of that, which is coming up in March of 2022, which we're really excited about. And that's one of our hybrid events that we put on. So the last thing I'll say is that we're looking to get these zero waste station kits into more spaces, right? So we have our zero waste station pop-ups, and we have online education, the social media component, and we'd really love to see this expand. So hopefully you do too, can support us as well, that mutual support between community members. Just as an example, one of the things that we had this year was just recently, an SCU student group helped us with a zero waste bingo competition that they put on at their university, at Santa Clara University. And we were so excited to have them and their ideas for how to reach out to the next generation, right? So the Gen Zers who are in university right now, and they had some great ideas and we got some additional engagement. So we're hoping to get that leadership aspect as well, right? Not just from the communities that we're in, but even reaching out to universities and campuses and getting the next generation involved so that they can be leaders in the future as well. And so that's it. Our zero waste specialists become community leaders. Hopefully you're inspired as well, and you can join us at one of our zero waste stations if you're in the Bay Area, or you can follow us on social. Here we are at Race to Zero Waste. Keep apprised of what's going on for our next in-person and hybrid campaigns. I'm happy to answer any questions at the end, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Hayden, so much. And we do have questions for you, but we're gonna save them for the end. For now, we're going to hear about Olivia and her amazing programs. I even have questions for you, Hayden. So, so exciting to see what you're doing in the Bay Area. And I love the encouragement of, if you're in the Bay Area, just connect with Hayden, volunteer, learn about their programs, how they're doing it. Maybe you can replicate it in your community, why not? So all hands on deck. Lots of questions for you, Hayden, but we're gonna hear from Olivia first. Olivia?
Okay, wonderful. Alejandra, can you see my screen?
Absolutely, and we can hear you clearly.
Perfect, okay. Okay, my name is Olivia Sanchez, so thank you for having me. I am the Recycling and Community Outreach Program Coordinator here for Riverside County Department of Waste Resources. We are located in Moreno Valley, but we serve all of Riverside County. Let me see here, okay. Really quick, well, we'll get to that point about how big our county is here in California. On this really quick agenda, we're going to go over what our Zero Waste Hero program is, what our participants committed to, and then of course review the results. So the Zero Waste Hero program overview is basically was a pilot program we developed, and we'll tell you where the genesis from that came from. And the overall purpose was this program was to encourage a zero waste lifestyle, or really a journey, I suppose, because you know there's so many different ways to get to that. And even when you think about things that you purchase and you might have limited options, what is an alternative? So but we were excited to have participants who were self-selected to participate, think about their waste habits and realize any improvements or easily sustainable swaps that could be made. And then that would really make a difference. But ultimately, the program would help us fine-tune our waste reduction outreach and strategies. So that was the secondary portion to this. And of course, this program was 100% virtual for this round. We were really hoping that we could have been in person, but obviously that wasn't a thing. And it gave us much more of a further reach in our county to do this online and virtual. So the inspiration for this program was from Hennepin County, Minnesota. They have their Zero Waste Challenge. Their challenge is 8 months long, and they have 50 households, and some of their requirements is that participants have to be part of a 3-cart system or have a shared bin, and they have virtual home visits, and they record their waste generation or degeneration, I suppose, for 2 weeks, every 2 weeks for about 2.5 months. After we sort of discussed it amongst ourselves, saying, you know, we're moving into a territory where people are still kind of, you know, perhaps not too sure what zero waste means. Let's start them slowly. We'll go into just a 3-month program so we don't scare too many people off who have decided to sign up. Sort of the same requirements. We were looking at 30 households, however, a little bit more manageable that way, so we could provide assistants. And then of course we wanted to do our virtual home visits with them. So here we were recording waste for 3 weeks. And then so basically 1 week every month. Okay. Oh, and really quick, the quick difference here though is Riverside County, we are about 7,303 square miles. So it's a really large swath of land here, and that we go all the way to the Arizona border. So, or Nevada border. Okay. So some of the expectations for our participants was to attend at least 3 of these 7 virtual workshops. And these virtual workshops weren't created specifically for this program. These were outreach classes that we had already developed. And I'll get into exactly what all those different ones were. And then we would hold virtual household visits with these households. And I have a staff of about 5 specifically that are focused on recycling specialists, and they would check in on their progress and answer any questions. The virtual household visits could be done on the phone, or FaceTime, Zoom, whichever was easiest, and so whenever the households were available to check in with the recycling specialist. And again, the expectation goes in that they would need to track and report the amount of trash, recycling, and food waste that they generated for 1 week at the beginning, middle, and end of the challenge. So we're assuming that most of these individuals, and they had also filled out a survey when they did submit interest, if they had already been exposed to other types of classes and training, what they might be interested. So we kind of knew of who was already our good recyclers, or people who were good at waste reduction, or others who were just starting this journey. So it was a lot of different people. And they needed to commit to the 3-month challenge, which ran from May 2021 through mid-August. And then of course, make the best attempt to reduce the amount of waste created in the households. We sent them out an event calendar because there was a lot happening during these months. And so we had an orientation class, which was really helpful. It was sort of mandatory, so everyone got the understanding what was expected, what some of these classes were, explain what some of these classes were that they were going to participate in. We've been fortunate enough to record many of our classes ahead of time, so they could even watch them on demand if they couldn't attend while live online. So you can see some of the different things we had before. They could take a green landscaping class, and then that week there in May, they had a weigh-in, and again, weighing all their trash, their recyclables, and their organics. Then they would have a virtual household visit, and then Recycle 1, 2, 3 was another class we had coming up, so they could attend that, which is the basics of recycling, what goes where in what bin and why. And then we had another class developed called Making Your Home Zero Waste, and that was well attended. As you can see, moving into the summer months, June, July, we have more classes that they can attend and program weigh-ins. And we actually did develop one specific class for this program, and that was the zero waste shopping class. And that was taking individuals to just kind of like show them how to shop in a grocery store and to make the right choices and things that they can swap out. We talked about refill stations and things like that, and other resources to them in our community, sort of throughout the region. And then the very end, of course, would be our graduation ceremony. Okay. Let's see here. And again, here are all the different workshops that we offered, both virtual and on demand. And we're hoping in 2022 to do some of these classes live. We have a speaker series where somebody or a group of people, whoever wants to request an in-person presentation, we can actually do that. But for the most part, we will be virtual for all these classes, with the exception of composting, vermicomposting, and we actually have making your own worm bin. So tracking and reporting, So you can see here, we actually sent out scales to people if they didn't have it, if they didn't have a luggage scale, or if they needed to use a bathroom scale, but they could weigh things. We also were allowing, though, to give us percentages of like how much material was sitting in their carts. So you can see kind of below what that would have looked like. Okay, so my cart's only 25% filled. And so we kind of had an idea of what each week would have looked like for them. But most people opted to go ahead and send us the weights. But we enjoyed photos, and here are some photos of some of that practice at work showing us what they were throwing away. We did call this one cat approved, and because you can see right here, this little cat's just trying to get into that container, too cute. So everyone was really thoughtful in providing us, you know, their feedback, their weights, their poundage, and we were able to start getting those charts filled out as to how much material was being diverted. And then here are some of our results. So we're starting off in May with the average trash weight, again, of these like 30 some, well, probably like close to like 28 households, about 27 pounds. And then you can see it slowly decreased as hopefully education increased, and the recycling weights went up as well, which was great. One of the tracking schedules also asked them for to provide any information on any reuse or donations that they had made as well. So if they were taking something to a thrift store or anything like that, what those tonnages would be. Otherwise, those would normally have been placed in the trash container. Here's the food waste that was diverted to compost. So you can see that items, those tonnages went up as well. We certainly encouraged people to do a food rescue class and to understand how food rescue works. So we went into that, and then how to also, you know, repurpose some of these materials before they become food waste into developing another meal, cooking with food scraps and things like that. So here's overall what our trash generation looked like from these households. We had a bit of a peak here and then a drop down. But we really maintained an increased amount of recycling, and our organics was high for our diversion and then started to go down. But I kind of attribute that because it was starting to get hot and there weren't too many people pulling green material out of their yards at this time. But again, because this is our pilot, we really wanted to start to establish a base so we can run this program again in 2022. Other items that we focused on too was to develop their own sort of forum to have discussions about different ways and best practices for things that they were recycling, or how they can learn better to be better zero waste folks, so participants. So he's created a Facebook page for them, and where my staff interacted with them, and then other volunteers, because we actually have a very active volunteer group that we oversee, and they were also invited to assist with some of these households. And so they presented some information that maybe they were working on, like the Milkweed to Monarch project, and things where people could be more activated in the community. And of course, at the end of the year, everybody got this virtual certificate of completion for demonstrating and completing the 3-month Zero Waste Hero program. And so we had a nice little reception, went over everyone's statistics and our champion recyclers. Some people were really great, but they were really willing to share a lot of the information that they did with others who were still, you know, trying to make some big changes in their lives. And we understand that it can be a bit difficult with kids and working and tons of animals. So we're, you know, there's some flexibility in getting to that goal. And that's my presentation. Thank you.
Amazing, Olivia. I have a ton of questions for you. I'm so glad I have your email. For all of you, I encourage you to keep the email for Hayden and also for Olivia. I added them to the chat in case we don't have time to answer your questions. We just have a few minutes left. I want to ask these questions to Hayden from Elizabeth. Can you share tips for keeping the Zero Waste ambassadors engaged?
Sure. So some of our zero waste ambassadors, those zero waste specialists that come and either work or volunteer with us, We have found that the supervisor makes a big difference. So if the supervisor is really energetic and into it, then we have those volunteers and specialists come back to us. And so kind of creating a sense of community within Race to Zero Waste, and helping people get excited about teaching other people, educating others about these, the ways that we sort our trash. So it's actually, not so different from the Zero Waste Heroes. I'm glad to have heard about your work too, Olivia. We're in that to help educate, and if you can help people be excited about that educational component and getting the message out to other people, then I think that makes a difference.
Question for Olivia. Were you able to have participants across different income levels? Super important.
Well, we didn't ask income level. We did ask age range and ethnicity, and I didn't show that. I don't believe I showed those pie charts on there. Just to kind of help us understand how we want to get our messaging out to the community, and where we might want to geo-target certain areas, and how much of our material needs to be available in different languages as well. But we did not look at income. However, I will say that we did address that making that journey to zero waste is not something that has to be income based. I know sometimes it's like, well, I'm not going to spend $45 for a kitchen composter. It's like, no, you can do something different, and it doesn't need to come from the Pottery Barn or something like that. It can be something you can make at home and repurpose a ceramic container or whatever, to keep down odors from decomposing food waste. We did offer to all those households that did participate a free worm bin or a free composting bin that they can use. So normally that's between $13 to $26, and we thought that would be a good incentive for those who wanted to do a little bit more.
One more question for you, Olivia, from Teresa. Did you notice less contamination in the recycling and compost bins over several months?
When they sent us pictures or showed the recycling specialist some photos, there was something like, well, I didn't want to put this in. I didn't know what to do with it. So they kind of held on to it. So if they had watched the recycling 1, 2, 3, we really got into what is a contamination issue, plastics, textiles, things like that. So a lot of it looked pretty nice and clean, although a lot of folks also started, composting as well. So I think that kind of was like a pause for them. Like, can this biodegrade? We talked about biodegradables, what truly is and kind of isn't. So those were lots of different sidebar conversations, but I think what's really helpful was the one-on-one that they experience they had with the recycling specialists. My staff did a tremendous job in, some hand-holding and a lot of guidance. Here's some information, always available. I think that's really difficult when you're doing outreach, because you kind of start, like you hand someone a flyer or something and then they leave, but this is really behavior change.
We have time for one last question for Hayden. How do you quantify results?
There we go. In our zero waste stations, we use the method provided by SFE, so San Francisco Department of the Environment. They have a calculator based on volume of each of the different bins. And so we calculate that based on the calculator that they've given us. So it kind of factors into the data collection for the city as well, so that we know what's happening at events and in public spaces, and we can legislate accordingly or apply regulations accordingly. So we're happy to be part of that as well.
Olivia, 30 seconds. What changes are you going to implement for next year?
So we have added 2 more classes. So we're going to kind of expand them to look at environmental justice and climate action and climate change. So that's going to be sort of like, what can you do now in your community as a part of not just making a difference in your household? So we're moving in that direction.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. Hopefully next year we'll get 1 entire hour to talk about these important issues. I'm gonna make sure that you guys get the emails to communicate with Olivia, with Hayden, asking lots of questions. Maybe you'll start your own program in your community. Thanks again for joining us and good luck. I hope you join the rest of the meetings because they're really exciting. And if you did not get to see the Yvette Arellano one, please, please, please check it out. Google her name or watch Story of Plastics to understand the problem with plastics and low income and underserved communities. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Alejandra and Olivia and Hayden. Really appreciate you being here.